It's an hour before sunrise on the west bank of the Nile. It's 1250 BCE, and you do not have a job. Not because you're unemployed, because the word doesn't exist yet in any form you'd recognize. You have no job title, no contract, no salary, no career, and no coins. There is not a single coin anywhere in Egypt, and there won't be for centuries. You will work today. You'll work tomorrow. You'll work most days of your life, and you will never once be paid money for any of it. And you already know exactly what you're doing today, not because anyone told you, because the river told you. Here's what I want you to sit with. We look at ancient Egypt and we see pharaohs, a god king on a throne, a gold mask, a name cut into a temple wall. What we never look at is the thing that actually had to work underneath all of it. How do you organize the time of several million people who cannot read, cannot tell the time, and cannot be paid? Because that's the real problem, not the monument. Anybody can want a monument. Getting a million people to show up on the right morning, in the right place, fed, that's the hard part. And Egypt solved it so early that we've been quietly copying the answer ever since. So today, the flood, the ration, the list, the day off, and the thing they built with their spare time. Let's go. First, the premise you clicked on, before jobs existed. I need to take that apart because it's wrong, and it's wrong in an interesting way. Ancient Egypt is not before jobs. Ancient Egypt is where the job was invented. This is one of the first places on Earth where a person could be a baker. Not somebody who baked, a baker, a brewer, a weaver, a scribe. A man whose entire working life was cutting one specific kind of stone. The Egyptian state generated job titles with a specificity that would embarrass a modern corporation. Overseer of the royal linen, keeper of the king's sandals, scribe of the granary. What Egypt didn't have is the thing we actually mean when we say the word. No hourly wage, no clock to be late against, no boss who could fire you because there was nowhere else to go, no CV because there was nobody to show it to. Your work wasn't something you got. It was something you were born into, and something the river handed you 3 times a year. So let's talk about time, because this is where it gets strange. You have 12 months. You've always had 12 months, and every one of them is basically the same shape. The Egyptian year had 3 seasons, and all 3 were named after the river. Akhet, the inundation, the flood. Peret, the emergence. The land comes back and you plant. Shamu, the harvest and the low water. That isn't calendar decoration. Those are 3 completely different lives, and you lived all 3 of them every single year. You were a different worker in each one. And the day was stranger still. The Egyptians split daylight into 12 hours and the night into 12 hours. Which sounds comfortingly familiar until you notice the problem. Daylight isn't the same length all year, so the hours stretched. An Egyptian summer hour was genuinely longer than an Egyptian winter hour. The hour wasn't a fixed quantity of time. It was 1/12 of however much light you happened to get that day. You have never once in your life experienced an hour that changed length. Every hour you've ever had has been exactly the same size, because at some point we decided the clock outranks the sun. The Egyptians decided the opposite, and they weren't confused about it. They simply weren't organizing their day around a machine. So the whole thing reduces to 3 inputs. The river tells you what to do. The sun tells you when to do it. The list tells you whether you did. Everything that follows is just versions of those 3. Move 1. The river picked your job. Akhet, roughly July to October. The Nile rises, the fields go under, and for about 3 months there is no farming because there is no field. Not less work, no work. The primary occupation of most of the country simply switches off. Then Peret, the water pulls back and leaves a fresh layer of black silt across everything. And now the entire country plows and sows at once. Then Shamu, harvest in the worst heat of the year, with the river at its lowest. You did not choose any of this. You did not apply. There was no negotiation. And there was also no unemployment, because the thing deciding it was several hundred miles upstream and completely indifferent to you. Move 2. You were paid in food. Now the money problem. There isn't any. Egypt ran for most of its history with no coinage at all. Coins don't arrive here until the middle of the first millennium BCE. And that's near the end of the story, not the middle. For the pyramids, for Tutankhamun, for essentially everything you picture when you picture Egypt, no money. So you were paid in bread and beer, literally, rations. A workman at el-medina, the village that housed the craftsmen who cut the royal tombs, drew a monthly allotment of emmer wheat and barley. And it's written down, so many sacks per man per month, with more for the foreman and the scribe. They did have prices. They used a unit called the deben, a weight of copper, to say what a thing was worth. A donkey cost so many deben. A bed cost so many deben. But almost nobody ever handed over a deben. You'd say this bed is worth 25, and your goat is worth 25, and you'd swap. The deben was a language for value, not an object in your hand, which is genuinely elegant and also fragile, because it means your wage is perishable, and it has to physically arrive. And around 1157 BCE, under Ramses III, it didn't. The grain was late. So the tomb workers at Deir el-Medina put down their tools, walked off the royal necropolis, and sat down at the mortuary temples until they were fed. It's generally considered the first recorded strike in human history. They weren't striking for more. They were striking for a wage they'd already earned, which was late, and which they could not eat. Move 3, the list. And here's the part that rearranged my head. We tend to imagine writing being invented for poetry or prayer or history. It wasn't. Overwhelmingly, the earliest writing anywhere, Egypt, Mesopotamia, is accounting. Lists, quantities, who delivered what, who owes what, who turned up. The first thing our species ever wrote down was payroll. And at Deir el-Medina, they kept attendance on limestone flakes, ostraca, which were free and lying everywhere. And they didn't just record that a man was absent. They recorded why. Recorded reasons include illness, brewing beer, building his house, a funeral, embalming his mother. One man is marked down as absent because he'd been stung by a scorpion. Family matters are noted plainly and without the slightest embarrassment. That is a 3,000-year-old HR record. A scribe wrote down that a man wasn't in today and why, and dropped the note on the ground. And it survived, and we can read it. And the week, 10 days long, 8 on, 2 off. During the working stretch, you slept up at the tombs in huts on the ridge, rather than walking home across open ground twice a day. And then you took your 2 days. All right, here's where this whole thing turns over. Go back to Akhet, the flood. 3 months in which the fields are underwater, and the largest organized workforce in the ancient world has, functionally, nothing to do. Now look at what you've got. Hundreds of thousands of able-bodied people, a state granary full of last year's harvest, and a river that has just turned the entire country into a navigation network. Because when the flood is up, you can float a barge to places you could never drag a sledge in a dry season. So what do you do with them? You build. The inundation is thought to have been a major organizing principle of monument labor. You feed the idle workforce out of the granary, and you put them on stone. And we're not entirely guessing here, because we have a diary. In 2013, at Wadi al-Jarf on the Red Sea coast, archaeologists found the oldest inscribed papyri ever discovered. Around 2560 BCE, the reign of Khufu. One of them is the logbook of a man named Marir, who ran a boat crew. And what Marir records, day after day, is hauling limestone blocks from the quarries at Tura, downriver, to Giza, to the Great Pyramid, while it was being built. It's a shipping log, the most famous structure on Earth, and our best contemporary document about it is a delivery schedule. So here's the turn. We look at the pyramids and we ask who was forced to build them. The better question is what else those people would have been doing that season. And the answer is nothing at all, because their fields were under 3 months of water. The monuments are not what Egypt built instead of feeding its people. They are what Egypt did with the part of the year when there was nothing to grow. The pyramid is the off-season. Here's what I keep coming back to. There's a man walking home along a dike on the second evening of his rest days in about 1250 BCE. He's been paid in grain and he is carrying it. He does not know what hour it is, and there is no way for him to find out. He knows the river is falling. He knows he's back at the tombs in 2 days. His week is 10 days long, and it has always been 10 days long. And when the sun goes down, the work stops, because there's no light, and light is the only thing with a vote. We built a clock that doesn't care about the sun. Then we built a light that doesn't care about the clock. Then we built a phone so that work could follow us into the 2 days off we'd spent a century fighting for. We won the weekend and then quietly handed it back. That man worked harder than you, ate less than you, and died younger than you. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But he was never once late, because there was nothing to be late for. And when the light went, the day was finished. So, could you do it? A 10-day week, 2 days off, a paid in bread and beer, no money, no clock, and a river that decides what you're doing for the next 3 months. Let me know in the comments. Until then, see you soon.